It happens in the breath between segments, when the camera swings from one face to another and the studio falls into a practice lull. The red light above camera 3 flickers. The host's hand adjusts papers. A producer counts down behind the glass. On-air tension simmers but doesn't yet boil. And then softly, just a murmur off mic, Karoline Leavitt leans slightly toward Jasmine Crockett. Her eyes don't blink. Her lips barely move. "Get out, ape." The words are cruel, small, venomous. Not shouted, not argued. Just dropped like a match on dry leaves. She thinks the microphone is off. It isn't. The slur echoes, faint but crystal clear, across the studio monitors, into the headsets of the sound techs, through the boom mics, into every living room where the broadcast airs live coast to coast. It takes a second for anyone to register what they've just heard. Then another. And then time halts. A low mechanical hum fills the silence. Air conditioning or maybe just a static buzz of disbelief. The host stares ahead, paralyzed. One of the panelists blinks, open-mouthed. A camera operator shifts slightly, as if unsure whether to keep recording. But Jasmine Crockett doesn't move. She doesn't flinch, doesn't react. Her eyes remain fixed, not on the floor, not at the cameras, but directly on Karoline. The same look she's perfected across courtrooms, council chambers, and committee yaw hearings. The kind that doesn't ask for justice. It demands it by merely existing. Karoline pretends she didn't say it. Her mouth curls just slightly as she refocuses on the next question forming on the teleprompter. She knows the game: plausible deniability, political insulation, redirect and spin. But this isn't just a gaffe. This isn't an out-of-context moment. This is what it sounds like when power forgets the mic is always on. Before we get too deep, tap like and subscribe if stories like this keep you up thinking. Tell us, what state are you listening from and what time is it where you are? Dim the lights, turn down the world, then this is where the silence breaks. The next 5 seconds feel like thunder trapped inside a glass jar. Because in those 5 seconds, America hears everything that's always been whispered behind closed doors. Everything muttered at rallies, buried in policy language, polished out of talking points. Only this time, it wasn't behind a podium. It wasn't a misstep. It was the naked truth, unvarnished, caught in the folds of a live broadcast. One of the youngest conservative firebrands, a rising political star, just called a sitting black congresswoman ape. And Jasmine Crockett still doesn't move. She remembers the first time someone called her that. It was 3rd grade. Playground. A white boy in a Batman shirt. She remembers the teacher telling her to be the bigger person. She remembers walking home, skipping dinner, and scrubbing her face in the mirror as if it could erase what someone else believed she was. But today, Jasmine is not in 3rd grade. She's in the middle of a nationally syndicated debate on race and governance, and millions of eyes are on her. The sound engineer doesn't cut the feed. The network doesn't bleep the slur. The producers, whether by fear or duty, let the moment hang, raw, unfiltered, broadcast in real time to every TV, phone, and tablet in the country. And Jasmine? She just blinks. Once, as if to say, "I heard you, we all did." But her hands remain still on the table. Her chin doesn't rise. Her breath even. Karoline shifts again, this time less sure of herself. Her smile flickers. She senses the weight of the silence, but it's too late to reclaim the air. Jasmine's silence is the answer. A silence forged from decades of being told to be polite, to not make it about race, to be respectable, forgiving, measured. But now this silence is sharp, intentional, powerful, and the whole world feels it. 8 seconds, that's how long the silence lasts. But it stretches, in perception, into something mythic. Like a pause before a storm that will rewrite everything in its path. For 8 seconds, no one blinks, no one speaks. The room holds its breath with the tension of a pulled bowstring. Not even the stage manager gestures. It's as if every person in the studio is suddenly aware they're not just part of a broadcast anymore. They're witnesses. Jasmine doesn't react with outrage. She doesn't stand up. She doesn't slam her fist or demand an apology. She just watches. Eyes locked. Unwavering. Karoline Leavitt, who just moments ago commanded the stage with poised rhetoric and a polished grin, now avoids eye contact. Her fingers twitch, then settle. Her body language stiffens. Something inside her knows the damage is done, but her political instincts tell her to stay still, ride it out. The host finally breaks the paralysis. Thank you, Congresswoman, for your thoughts, he stammers, trying to move on. Now let's get back to the core of this discussion. But no one is listening to him. Not really. Not in that room, and certainly not in the homes now flooding Twitter and TikTok with clip recordings. The moment has already been clipped, titled, shared. One caption reads, "She said what?" Another, "Mic hot, racism cold-blooded." But inside the studio, Jasmine remains silent just a little longer. And then, slowly, she leans forward, still calm. Her voice enters like a knife through velvet, soft, controlled, precise. "I've been called worse," she says, her gaze still anchored. "But not to my face. So thanks, I guess." There's a stunned silence, again. But now it's different, sharper, heavier. No longer frozen by shock, but pierced by the clarity of her words. Jasmine doesn't speak like a politician playing defense. She speaks like a woman who survived this moment 1,000 times in quieter rooms, in parking lots, in office interviews where the racism wore a tie. And now, in the most public forum possible, she finally has a microphone that won't cut her off. "I remember being denied housing because of my name," she says, voice still even. "Being told my skin was too urban for certain jeans, being told by a kindergarten classmate that my hair looked like a Brillo pad. No tears, no trembling, just a measured accounting of pain repackaged as facts. Data points from a life lived under scrutiny." Karoline's eyes dart toward the producer's desk. No help is coming. She's alone in this. The host tries again to redirect. "Let's remember to keep things civil." But Jasmine doesn't stop. "Civility," she says. "Civility is what I've practiced every day while the country demanded I be grateful for just existing in rooms like this." Her voice doesn't rise. That's the brilliance of it, that she doesn't yell. She lets the truth do the shouting. "I don't need an apology," she says finally, "because I'm not the one who looks small today." A cameraman blinks rapidly, stunned. One of the producers mouths, "Oh my God," behind the glass. The silence that had followed the slur has now become its opposite, a spellbinding stillness around Jasmine's poise and pain, a sacred hush. Karoline presses her lips together. Her practiced smirk is gone now, and what remains is a woman realizing that silence doesn't protect you when the truth starts speaking. Outside the studio, people begin texting, tweeting, reposting. "I've been called worse, but not to my face." The quote hits the timeline like a tidal wave, not because it's loud, but because it's familiar. Because millions of Americans, especially women of color, have thought that same sentence, bit their tongues through meetings, swallowed slurs, made themselves smaller. And now someone had said it for them, on live TV. In the comment threads of early uploads, one viewer writes, "She didn't defend herself. She dismantled the lie with grace." Another, "This is not the moment Karoline fell. It's the moment Jasmine stood." In Washington, the clip is already playing in aides' offices. Staffers pause to watch. Phones ring. An intern whispers, "You need to see this." The fallout has only just begun, and Jasmine hasn't even left her seat yet. The moment doesn't end with applause. It doesn't need to, because the real rupture, the kind that changes people, doesn't come with fanfare. It comes in the quiet after something irreversibly honest is said. Jasmine Crockett sits exactly where she was before the slur. Same posture, same calm. But now the atmosphere around her feels charged, like static right before lightning. The studio's air, once conditioned and predictable, carries a strange weight, like history pressing in through the walls. Karoline still hasn't spoken. Her eyes stay low, scanning her notes, as if rewriting the moment through bullet points, could erase what's already viral. The host clears his throat again, now visibly shaken. Congresswoman Crockett, thank you for your perspective. Let's pivot to, Jasmine gently raises a hand, just enough to pause the noise. Not a dramatic gesture, just clarity, wrapped in discipline. I'd like to finish, she says. No one interrupts. She turns to the camera now, not just to the room, not to Karoline, not to the host, but to the millions watching who don't get to answer back when they're insulted, who've been called names when the mic wasn't hot, who live entire lives with the mic never on. I'm not here to prove I belong, she says. I'm not here to demand decency. I've learned not to beg for what should be common. Then her voice drops just slightly, and that's what makes people lean in. When I was 6, a teacher told me I was too loud for a little girl. When I was 10, I was suspended because I talked back when a boy touched my hair. When I was 17, I was followed in a department store for wearing a hoodie. She breathes. And every single time, I was told the same thing. Don't make it about race. A pause. So today, when someone says what they really think, when the mask slips, I won't act surprised. But I will remember, and I will make sure everyone else does too. Inside the studio, there's a slow tectonic shift in presence. A sound technician silently turns up Jasmine's mic gain, just a hair, instinctively giving her space. The host looks down, ashamed. One panelist, who had rolled her eyes earlier in the show, now seems deeply still, maybe even shaken. And in a green room 3 doors away, a PBS producer leans forward and whispers to her assistant, "We need her. Get her on a long form." As Jasmine finishes her sentence, the feed cuts to commercial, abrupt and clumsy, as if the network suddenly realized they were airing something too raw, too uncontrolled, too real. But it's too late. The moment has already escaped the confines of the channel. It's on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, text messages, group chats, stitch edits with subtitles, analysis, threads, captions, screenshots, and one clip in particular leads them all. It's the 7 seconds where Jasmine leans in and says, "I've been called worse, but not to my face." Underneath it, one commenter writes, "This wasn't a clapback, it was a mirror held steady." Another, "This is what dignity under pressure looks like." And another more blunt, "She burned her with truth, no gasoline needed." By the time Jasmine leaves the studio, the hashtag and she didn't flinch has already trended #1. It's printed in Helvetica across memes, added to high school civics class discussion boards, reposted by celebrities and civil rights organizations, even reshared by some conservative voices, trying clumsily to distance themselves from Karoline's words. And Jasmine? She doesn't retweet, doesn't post a statement. She walks out of the building quietly, holding her coat, phone off, jaw set. A driver opens her door. She nods politely, slides into the car, and finally lets out the breath she's been holding for 15 years. Because while America just heard the insult for the first time, Jasmine's been hearing it her whole life. The difference is, now the mic is on, and this time she answered. The internet doesn't wait for permission. By the time Jasmine's car merges into DC traffic, the moment has taken on a life of its own. The clip is no longer just a news item. It's a cultural artifact, a digital scar scratched into the timeline of American politics. The phrase "get out ape" is being dissected, condemned, and in some corners, defended. But no one can ignore it. Not now, not with a million eyes watching, sharing, reacting. Within 12 minutes, the hashtag #SheDidn'tFlinch surpasses 300,000 uses. Influencers, activists, high school debate teams, everyone weighs in. But the power of the moment isn't just in the words. It's in Jasmine's face, that stare, that stillness. A journalist tweets, "She didn't argue, she didn't retreat. She absorbed centuries of venom in 8 seconds and walked through it like smoke." News anchors scramble. By evening, CNN, MSNBC, and even Fox run variations of the headline. Karoline Leavitt under fire for racial slur on live TV. Karoline's team issues a statement. Congresswoman Leavitt did not use the phrase in question. This is a case of poor audio quality as an intentional misinterpretation by partisan actors. But the internet isn't buying it. A sound engineer breaks down the waveform, matching Karoline's mouth movement to the slur with clinical precision. Audio experts weigh in. Lip readers confirm. There's no wiggle room left. This wasn't misheard. This was exposed. But none of it prepares Jasmine for what happens next. Her staffer knocks on her hotel room door that night, holding a tablet and blinking in disbelief. "There's a video," she says. "You need to see it." Jasmine takes the tablet, presses play. It's a front-facing video filmed in portrait mode. A young black girl, no older than 9, sits cross-legged on a patterned rug. Her voice is quiet but firm. "Hi, Miss Jasmine," the girl says. "My name is Alina. I'm from Detroit. I saw what that lady said to you. I didn't know people still said stuff like that on TV." She pauses, thinking. "You didn't yell or cry? You were calm, like a superhero. My mom said you were brave." Jasmine swallows hard. The girl continues. "I'm sorry someone said that, but I'm happy you stayed calm. I didn't know I could be strong like that too." Then the girl leans in and whispers, as if offering a secret. "Thank you for not yelling. It helped me." The video ends. Jasmine doesn't speak. Her hand covers her mouth. Her other hand tightens around the tablet as her eyes fill. Not from pain, not from outrage, from impact. Because what she just heard wasn't a thank you, it was a confirmation. That her restraint reached someone. That her silence spoke. That the choice not to fight with fire, but with gravity, gave a child permission to believe in her own strength. Downstairs, her phone buzzes. It's a message from a PBS producer. "We'd like to offer you a platform, not for a reaction, for something larger, a new series, your voice, your terms." "Hold the mic. Say yes when you're ready." Jasmine sets the tablet down slowly. She walks to the window, opens it slightly, and lets the city night pour in. Sirens in the distance. Car horns. The low hum of a world still spinning. But somewhere out there, a girl in Detroit believes she can be brave. And tonight, that's enough. The next morning begins not with headlines, but with a ripple. A quiet chain of phone calls between congressional offices. Subtext-laden emails from communications directors. A hastily convened ethics subcommittee pre-meeting where no one says the word ape, but everyone knows why they're there. The halls of Capitol Hill, usually roaring with performative outrage and party-line speeches, now buzz with a different kind of tension. Unspoken, sharp. The kind that makes even seasoned staffers check their posture and double-check their microphones. But Jasmine Crockett, she arrives exactly on time. Her entrance is not grand. She doesn't wear a new suit or deliver rehearsed barbs. She walks like she always does, straight-backed, efficient, focused. But something in the air around her has changed. Not fear, not sympathy, respect. Not the performative kind given at photo ops, but the rare kind that emerges when someone does not flinch, even under fire. In her office, flowers begin arriving. Dozens of arrangements, some with notes, for being unshakable. ML, Chicago. "You reminded my daughter what power really looks like." Your stillness echoed louder than screams. Her aide tries to keep them from piling up too high near the door. There's also an envelope, unmarked, slipped under her office door. Inside, a note. "You don't know me, but I've sat on this hill for 12 years. I've heard worse. I've felt worse. But no one ever answered like you did." Jasmine folds the paper carefully. No tears today, just silence, thick with acknowledgement. The PBS producer calls again. This time Jasmine picks up. "Yes," she says before they can even pitch, "but not about me." The producer stumbles. "Of course, we were thinking, I want it to be called Hold the Mic, not Take It, not Steal It. Hold, like a relay, because this isn't about me being the loudest voice in the room." Pause. It's about building rooms where no one gets cut off. Days later, Hold the Mic is greenlit. The concept is simple. Real people, real stories. Each episode, a different guest. Jasmine moderates, but doesn't interrupt. No cutaways, no shout-downs, no time limits. Just truth, and time to tell it. The first guest, a Muslim veteran who faced racial profiling in airport screenings for 15 years. The second, a Native American nurse who was laughed out of a courtroom for testifying in her own language. By the third episode, Hold the Mic hits trending status on streaming, not because it's slick or flashy, but because people are tired of sound bites. They crave stories that breathe. And Jasmine, she doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't dominate the space. She listens. She holds space. The same way she once held silence. At the Capitol, the backlash against Karoline Leavitt intensifies. Sponsors pull endorsements. An internal memo from her party leaks, labeling her a communications liability. Some try to frame it as a misunderstanding. Others suggest it's part of a liberal smear campaign. But the footage speaks louder than their excuses. A bipartisan ethics review begins quietly. No one expects real consequences, but something is different. Not punishment, not policy, perspective. In an editorial that week, a prominent journalist writes, Jasmine Crockett didn't clap back. She didn't seek revenge. She held a mirror and asked us all if we liked what we saw. And across dinner tables, classrooms, even boardrooms, the question lingers, because it's not just about one insult or one woman. It's about how power responds when it's forced to look at itself and who we choose to become in that silence. By the end of the week, something shifts, not in policy, not in legislation, but in the way people look at each other. A freshman congressman from Utah steps into an elevator with Jasmine. He doesn't say anything right away. He just nods, the kind of nod that says, I heard it too. I saw it, and I can't unsee it. As the doors close, he finally speaks. I told my son about what happened, he says. Didn't sanitize it, just told him. And then we watched your reply together. Jasmine doesn't smile, but she offers a soft thank you. That's all, because she knows it's not about applause. It's about momentum. On the third episode of Hold the Mic, Jasmine introduces someone the audience doesn't expect. A former campaign volunteer for Karoline Leavitt. A young white woman, early 20s, nervous but determined. I didn't come here to apologize for her, the girl says. I came because I used to laugh at those jokes too, until I realized they weren't jokes to the people hearing them. Jasmine listens, hands folded, expression unreadable. The guest continues, what you said that night, I don't need an apology because I'm not the one who looks small. It's stuck. I've been small. I don't want to be anymore. It's raw, unpolished, human, and that's exactly what makes it powerful. Elsewhere, a law school in Georgia assigns Jasmine's speech as required viewing for first-year students. A professor in Boston redesigns her syllabus to include Hold the Mic episodes alongside classic political theory texts. High school students in Ohio stage a debate where the resolution is resolved. Silence can be stronger than speech. They open the round by playing the original clip, Jasmine sitting still, looking into the camera saying, I've been called worse, but not to my face. Back in D.C., Jasmine walks the marble corridors of the Capitol alone one evening after hours. A janitor, black, mid-60s, with salt and pepper hair, nods as she passes. He doesn't say much, just, you didn't flinch. My wife watched 3 times. Jasmine stops, meets his eyes. She didn't think anyone like her could get this far, he adds. But now she tells my granddaughter, look, just look. They both stand in that hallway a moment too long. Not awkward, just quiet. She nods. Sometimes a hallway becomes a cathedral. Karoline Leavitt, meanwhile, releases a second statement. This time it's more polished. While I stand by my values, I regret that any words, intentional or not, cause pain. We must return to a place of respectful dialogue. But no one buys it. The networks don't even bother running it in full. A few pundits read between the lines. Others dismiss it entirely. Jasmine, for her part, never mentions Karoline again. Not in interviews, not in writing, not even when asked directly. Because this story was never about Karoline. It was about what happens when someone tries to reduce another person to less than human and instead elevates them to more. During a panel discussion, a moderator asked Jasmine, "Do you think what you said changed anything?" She considers the question for a long moment, then answers, "No, I think what she said finally let the truth out. I just didn't run from it." The moderator leans in. "So, what did change?" Jasmine looks into the crowd where a mother holds her child on her lap. "I think people finally listened," she says, "because I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I just stayed." Later that night in her journal, Jasmine writes one sentence. "Power doesn't always speak. It waits for everyone else to run out of noise." Sunday morning. The networks call it a reckoning, though Jasmine doesn't use the word. To her, it feels less like a reckoning and more like exposure. A light turned on in a room people pretended was well lit all along. She sits at the Meet the Nation roundtable. Across from her, 3 veteran journalists, 1 retired senator, and a constitutional law professor. The topic? Free speech, civility, and political accountability. But no one says the phrase. No one repeats it. "Get out, ape." The producers have scrubbed it from the cue cards. The anchor dances around it, using words like incident, alleged slur, heated exchange. Jasmine lets them twist for a few minutes. Then she speaks. "You don't have to name the rot to know it's there," she says, "but if we keep pretending the air's clean when it's full of smoke, we're just as guilty." There's a pause. The senator shifts in his seat. The professor chimes in. "But where do we draw the line between missteps and malice?" Jasmine turns to him gently. "You draw it at history," she says. "If someone steps into a room full of wounds and throws salt, intentionally or not, do we really need to ask if they meant harm?" The camera cuts to the anchor, but the moment lingers. Viewers across the country don't just hear her. They feel her. After the broadcast, Jasmine doesn't head back to her office. Instead, she takes a detour to a small church on the east side of the city. No press, no entourage, just her, slipping into a back pew during the second hymn. The sermon today is about salt and light. The pastor talks about how salt preserves truth, even when it stings, how light reveals, even when it blinds. Jasmine doesn't nod, doesn't sing. She just listens, hands clasped in her lap. Near the end, a woman in her 70s leans across the aisle and whispers, "You were our sermon last week." Jasmine smiles, a real one this time. Not for the cameras, not for the crowd, just for the moment. Later that afternoon, Congress returns to session. Outside the Capitol, protesters chant. Some wear shirts with Jasmine's quote. Others carry signs. "She held the line." No more whispers. Hold the mic. Inside, the mood is unpredictable. Some lawmakers avoid eye contact. Others nod with new acknowledgement. A few still mutter, loud enough to signal allegiance, but not accountability. Then in the middle of the chamber, Representative Torres, Latina, mid-50s, rises. "I'd like to yield my time," she says, "to Congresswoman Crockett, if she'll accept." The room shifts. Jasmine stands slowly. No notes, no script, just her voice. "I accept, but only if we understand what this time really means." In that moment, Jasmine doesn't talk about herself. She talks about the janitor who once walked her to safety after a late-night vote, about a young Hill intern who quit after being told her hair was unprofessional, about an immigration lawyer who was mocked for his accent in a televised debate. She lists no names, cites no enemies. But everyone knows, because silence isn't always absence. Sometimes it's indictment. At the end of her time, Jasmine says, "I don't want your sympathy. I want your clarity. I want to know who among you will sit quietly the next time a mic is lit, Mom." And then she sits, no applause, just the rustle of papers, a few deep breaths, one slow nod from the speaker, and a room that now knows you don't have to shout to shake the walls. 3 weeks later, everything is quieter, but nothing is the same. The initial headlines have faded. The cycle has churned. New scandals, new clips, new outrage. Yet the air still carries the aftertaste of something uncovered, something that can't be ignored anymore. Jasmine stands in the wings of a small auditorium in Atlanta. Tonight isn't about politics. It's about community. She's here for a town hall, not the kind with televised panels and photo ops, but folding chairs, mismatched microphones, and kids in the front row with open notebooks. She adjusts her blazer, checks her notes, then leaves them behind. A local organizer introduces her simply. She didn't flinch when it would have been easier to fold. Jasmine Crockett. The applause is warm but not explosive. It's the kind that says, we know who you are, not just what you did. Jasmine steps up to the podium. The microphone squeals slightly. She smiles, waits, then she begins. I've been asked 100 times what I wish I said in that moment. She pauses. But the truth is, I didn't say anything more than I needed to. A few people nod. One woman murmurs, that's right. Because when someone tries to reduce you to an insult, Jasmine continues, the only power they have is the reaction they hope to provoke. She lets the line settle. But when you stay still, when you choose stillness, not out of fear, but out of mastery, that's when the insult turns back on itself. From the back of the room, someone raises a hand, a teenage boy with wide eyes and a notebook perched on his lap. How do you not get angry? He asks. Jasmine smiles gently. I do get angry, she says, but I don't let it make me smaller than the moment. I've learned to let it sharpen me, not shatter me. A beat. I've also learned that sometimes not reacting is the most radical thing you can do. The event ends with hugs, quiet thanks, and a dozen whispered stories from women who say things like, I've been there. They said that to me too. I didn't know how to hold my ground until I saw you do it. As Jasmine leaves the building, someone hands her a sketch. It's charcoal on paper. Her face, calm, eyes steady. Not from the infamous clip, but from tonight. Underneath it, handwritten in careful block letters, she held. That night, back in her hotel room, Jasmine turns on the news for the first time in days. A commentator is discussing another scandal, this one unrelated. But at the bottom of the screen, in the crawl, she sees it. PBS's Hold the Mic expands to 12 episodes. Jasmine walks through her apartment alone that night. No shoes, no makeup, just the hum of the fridge, the soft creak of floorboards under tired feet. She sets her bag down. The silence greets her. Not the suffocating kind, but the kind that waits, the kind that listens. She picks up the charcoal sketch, runs her fingers across the lines. She doesn't hang it, not yet, just holds it in the space between her hands, like a question she's not ready to answer. In the quiet, she replays it, not the slur, not the headlines, but the 8 seconds, those 8 seconds of stillness that became a mirror for a nation. 8 seconds that changed how a little girl in Detroit saw herself. 8 seconds that shifted the weight of silence from oppression to power. She walks to the window. The city stretches out before her, restless, glowing, never truly asleep. Somewhere another mic will go hot, another slur will slip, another woman will be tested, and maybe, just maybe, because of this, she won't flinch either. Jasmine closes her eyes. One line echoes in the stillness, a truth unspoken but understood. What we choose not to say still speaks. This story is a fictionalized and dramatized narrative. Any resemblance to actual events or individuals beyond public knowledge is purely coincidental.